I want to welcome you all to the How to Get to Joy Honoring Loss During the Holidays webinar hosted by MBA's Older Adult Ministries Innovative Conversation Group. My name is Britt Detain, and I am the Senior Marketing Associate at MBA. And on behalf of our Board of Trustees, Disciples, Partner Ministries, and staff, we are your Health and Social Service General Ministry of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ. Before we begin, I have just a couple of quick items to pass along to all of you. So first, I wanted to let you know that this webinar is being recorded. So please keep that in mind as you can choose to either stay on, leave your camera on or turn it off. But I do ask that you check real quick just to make sure that you have your microphone muted at this time. I also wanted to let you know that this recording will be posted to the MBA's YouTube page later this week, and it will also be shared with all of you as we also share additional resources following the conclusion of this webinar. In addition, there will be an opportunity to ask questions later in the webinar. When we get to that point, you can either type your questions into the chat or you can use the raised hand feature that Zoom offers you. If you're not familiar with the raised hand option, if you go down to the bottom of your Zoom screen, you will see a button that says React, and it has an image of a heart right above it. If you click on that, you will see a set of different options, emojis of all kinds. And in addition to that, at the very bottom, it'll say Raise Hand. And if you click on that, a hand will appear over your screen. We will call on you and you'll be able to ask your question at that time. So we're so glad that you're here. And at this time, I will now turn things over to Jan Eddy, who will be moderating today's webinar. Jan, over to you.
Here I am, and thank you, Britt, and welcome to all of you. We're just delighted that you're here with us today. This being a webinar of a timely fashion, it's fitting well, I think, into what your time and ours is. So we're so glad for that. I am a gerontologist, and as Britt mentioned, the moderator today, but also the coordinator of our Older Adult Ministries group that works together with innovative conversations and creating resources. Kimberly and Lina and I are sharing with you today, and you'll soon be hearing from Lina and Kimberly as they share with you. I want to share just quickly with you the format for our hour. First of all, we will have a brief introduction where Lina will share about herself and then share with you a contemplative moment that's important to her and to all of us. And then she will do some more sharing, and then Kimberly will. And after that, they will invite you to think with them about some ways of ministry, some models of self-care, and working on some ideas that could be replicable in your own personal life or in your church situation. We always commit to doing that. As Britt mentioned, following that time, then there will be a question and answer time. We also promise that tomorrow we will be emailing you with a list of recommended resources that we have put together on this topic. We hope that you'll stay in touch with us and that we can continue to communicate together even after this hour. And then don't forget, as Britt mentioned, the recording will also be available. We'll let others know that it's there. For me, my grief journey began when I was 37 years old. My mother died of cancer. That was the hardest. But in the years that followed, I lost my father, my brother, my mother-in-law, two brothers-in-law, and several other extended family members, all within a matter of a few years. The ironic or interesting thing about each of those losses was that they all occurred in late fall, right around the holidays. For me, as I mentioned, with the death of my mom, I felt as though I was hanging by a thread a lot of the time. For many times and many years, I felt as though I was taking one step forward in grief and two steps back. and trying to figure all of that out and find the support that I needed. I also learned as every year those holidays approached again and again, I began to reread one of my favorite books, The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. And one of the quotations in there absolutely struck my heart. I'd read it many times before. It goes like this: the deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. That became my mantra and still is, actually. And I learned from that with the upcoming holidays each year, I could decide that I would shoulder my grief and I would carry that mantra and walk straight into the middle of the holiday. That's been the way that I've found that I can manage. Now, as we share our stories and as we share some of what we've learned and our perspectives, I'd invite Lina now to share with you. Welcome, Lina.
Hi, I'm Lina Eddy, and I live in California, but I'm the interim pastor at Millersburg Christian Church. My ministry has been for about 26 years, and one of the things I've learned in ministry is that I have experienced walking with people in their grief and have learned to be present with them while they have been in the process of grieving. This experience of walking with folks in their experience has been very sacred. To walk with them in their journey has been a profound experience. A dear friend of mine lost her husband about a month ago, and I remember we went out to dinner about a month ago. Her husband was in the hospital, and she said, "You know, I miss my husband so much. I still sit in the living room and talk to his chair, and I still yell at his chair." I said, "Well, you know, that's okay to do that." Well, on Saturday, we went out to dinner again, and he had passed away. And she looked at me and she said, "I don't know what it's like to be a widow." I said, "Do you still talk to his chair?" And she said, "Yeah, I do." I said, "Well, that's pretty normal, and that's okay to do that." These profound times of sacred journeys that I've had the ability to be a part of have been amazing. And they are sacred to be able to walk through these and with folks that I've become so honored to be a part of. But I have also experienced sadness and sorrow in my own life. One of the last people I have lost was my mom, and it was in the summer. I was the pastor of a church in my community, and my husband and I were visiting her in Pennsylvania, and we went out to lunch with her, and we said goodbye, and we were headed back. And if any of you know, Pennsylvania is a long drive. We got all the way through Pennsylvania, and we were in West Virginia, and her doctor called us. And I have never gotten a call from a doctor. And the doctor called us and told us that we needed to drive back. And we got back there in enough time to say goodbye to her. And I had never felt so much like an orphan when I had lost her. And it took a lot to get through that. And the holidays were difficult. She's been gone for about 7 years. And I spend time each year doing things that are important to me and important to her. She used to collect butterflies, so I go through her butterfly collection that I brought home with me, and I spend time just enjoying that. And those are some of the things we do to honor her and honor the joy of those folks and honor those times with those who have meant so much for her. Those are sacred times that we honor those who have been with us. And you'll hear more about that as we go on. I wanted to take a moment to do a moment of contemplation. When we go through these times of change and times of sorrow, these are times that we learn different things. And our lives go through many different changes. Sometimes we just need to breathe deep, and we need to close our eyes and take a deep breath. And sometimes that is the hardest thing to do, is to sit back and take that deep breath. Sometimes we need to just learn how to live through them. And sometimes we just need to forget what is going on, and we need to just breathe. I invite you to sit back just for a moment and listen to scripture. There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down, a time to search and a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time to be silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. Please take time during this journey today to go through the holidays and to get your joy.
Thank you, Lina. Well, my name is Kimberly. I am in Jacksonville. And by the way, Lina is in California, Missouri, not like the state of California. So anyway, I'm a disciple clergy serving in Jacksonville as a chaplain and executive director of a ministry to about 300 low-income seniors living independently in subsidized housing. Prior to that, for 7 years, I was a hospice chaplain and a pediatric chaplain before that. And early on, I found a passion for facilitating support groups, whether it was a caregiver support group or a grief support group. And then in 2019, just before the pandemic, my oldest son, Ryan, died as a result of a car accident. He was 19. And I share that to say that having my own personal loss put to the test all the ministry that I had been doing for others up to that point. Did the words and the support that I used to give others, did that hold up now for me? So that has been a journey and has impacted my passion for grief support. So it's a heavy topic that we're dealing with as we talk about grief and loss. So whenever I facilitate a workshop like this, I like to start with an activity that would likely be comfortable and a little lighthearted. So I am going to try that out on all of you. This activity is called This or That. And since we're approaching Thanksgiving, I'd like you all to weigh in on some very important seasonal debates. So you can raise your hand just physically, or if you want to use the React feature, I'm going to ask you some this or that questions. Are you ready? Very important. Cornbread dressing or herb dressing? Who's cornbread? Oh, Southern people love it. And herb dressing? No, it's about half and half from what I can see. All right. Okay, pumpkin pie or pecan pie? So pumpkin, where are my pumpkin people? All right, and Pecan. Oh, I think pumpkin wins that one. All right. And okay, this one's also very important. You can tell a lot about where somebody's from. Mashed potatoes or sweet potatoes? So who are my mashed? Yes. Sweet potatoes. Nice. All right. Turkey or ham? So turkey, I guess for Thanksgiving, turkey. Ooh, that's a good majority there. Okay. And ham? Not as many ham. Sometimes we alternate, maybe do one on Christmas and a different one on Thanksgiving. All right. Peas or green beans? So who are peas? Oh, only a couple peas. And my green beans, where are my green bean fans? Yes. Nice. Coffee or tea? Coffee. Who are my coffee drinkers? All right. What about tea? Oh, okay. And last one. Do you prefer to stay home or go visit family and friends? So who are my stay-at-homers? Mm-hmm. Nice. All right. And my get out of Dodge people, go visit. Because when you go visit others, you don't necessarily have to do as much cooking and cleaning, right? Awesome. Well, thank you for participating in that. One of the scriptures that I have clung to over the years is the one that Lina actually just shared with us from Ecclesiastes. And while the activity that we just did is an or activity, what I really cling to in the Ecclesiastes scripture is the word and. I don't know if you noticed that, but if we focus on the word and, for example, some of you may like pumpkin pie and pecan pie. Do I have any and people out there? Absolutely. So the writer of Ecclesiastes embraces the and. The writer doesn't say that there's a time to weep or a time to laugh. The writer says there's a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. And why is that significant? Well, what I learned from the grief work that I've done with others and the grief that I've experienced myself is that seemingly conflicting and opposite emotions can coexist. They can take place in the very same breath, but we just don't talk about that very much. More than a few grieving people have said to me, I feel like I'm going crazy. One minute I'm fine and laughing about something, and the next minute I am a puddle of tears. What is wrong with me? Of course, my response is absolutely nothing. Friends, we aren't taught how to live in the mixture of emotions that is the and. We're taught about the or. We're taught by parents and teachers, things are black or white, good or bad, right or wrong. But we have not learned how to live in the and. Because the reality is we can hold sadness and joy in the very same sacred space, like Lina talked about, that sacred space. We can name our sadness, we can honor our grief, and we can still find things to feel joyful about. Learning to live in the and acknowledging all of the emotions that we have in a given moment that could absolutely change in the very next moment. Doing that is what can actually help us find joy during the holidays. So let's do some naming. And so this will actually be a time for you to share. So you will need to unmute to join this part of the conversation, and I hope you will. Why is it that some of us dread the holidays? I'd like to just name some of those things together.
Work.
Work. Do you mean, tell me about that.
Around the house with people visiting, or if you're in ministry, the amount of stuff that goes into the Advent season.
Yes. Amen. Thank you for that. Why else do we dread the holidays sometimes? Jerry?
I think it's, for me, it's the scheduling and the complications. I have 4 kids who are all married and trying to navigate which in-laws and all that they have to be at when they'll meet at my house and stuff. It's just the scheduling. It gets frustrating and difficult sometimes.
Absolutely. Jerry Muncie?
Yeah. For me too, there's family conflicts, past hurts and past memories, past issues that have never been resolved that always seem to rise once again during the holidays.
Good point. Thank you for sharing. Mitchell, did you have something too?
Yes, lost a younger sister just before Thanksgiving. So late November always kind of is hovering over that time of year.
Absolutely. Gotcha. Thank you for sharing that. Karen?
Mine is that after years and years of infertility, preaching about an unexpected and miraculous baby is a special kind of torture.
Definitely. Thank you, Aaron.
I'm going to be honest. Thanksgiving and Christmas, I get about at least 10 pounds on me that I didn't have before that because I love all the food that comes. So that's a problem for me. I'm trying to get over that, but it's every year it seems like I gain weight and then I have to take it off in January. So
thanks for sharing that, Linda. Joseph?
I would say a sense of aloneness that you may carry all year long intensifies in a crowd. So.
For sure. For sure. Angel Luis?
Yeah, thanks. How to deal with this first Christmas without my dad? He passed away this last May, and I am anticipating it would be a complicated time for my family.
Definitely. Thank you. Karen?
For me, it's letting go of old traditions that I held dear, as my daughter was just recently married and she wants to do her own traditions. And so just letting go of all of that and embracing something new.
Definitely. Well, thank you all so much for sharing. I think it's important to acknowledge for ourselves what is hard. It's important to name it. Getting back to the Ecclesiastes scripture, I'd like us to place the idea in our heads that regarding our emotions, this time of year especially, means holding together as sacred emotions that seem to be the opposite. And what do we do with that? Well, we've done the first step, which is naming what those things are that make the holidays difficult. And now let's go to the next step, which Lina is going to talk about, which is honoring our loss. Lina?
The next step is that we need to honor those things that seem to get in the way or get away from it and get away from expressing joy. The first year that I was a pastor, I was a pastor in California, that is Missouri, not the state of, and I was a pastor of a small little church, and there was this couple, and they were this wonderful couple. They were pillars of the congregation, and they were married for 65 years, and they were just this wonderful couple. And one day the husband, Peter, started feeling very sick, and they took him to the doctor, and the doctor sent him on to the hospital. Well, he started having some chest pains, and they found out that he had a heart problem. And so they sent him on to a specialist, a hospital in one of the teaching hospitals. And what ended up happening was he ended up having open heart surgery. And he ended up being in the hospital for about 5 weeks. and he passed away. Well, this Peter and his wife, they were married in this church. Their children were baptized in this church. They truly were I think they were actually one of the founding members of this church. So when it came time for his funeral, the funeral home was so full that they brought in extra chairs, they brought in extra televisions to broadcast to have folks in waiting areas able to see his funeral. About 6 months later, his wife was not feeling well. His wife went to her physician, and she started not feeling well, and they sent her to the doctors, and she had a stroke. And they sent her on to a teaching hospital, and she did not survive the stroke. In the midst of this process, my congregation had a difficult time with the loss of this couple. They were feeling angry and frustrated and sadness of what had happened, that these this couple was lost, and the community felt the loss of this couple. They talked to me, they talked to the funeral director, and asked what we could do to help find a way to honor this couple and honor the love for this couple in the community. The funeral director decided that at Christmas time he purchased this huge tree, and he put it on the porch of the funeral home. And he invited members of the church, members of the congregation, and members of the community to decorate the church with Christmas ornaments to honor Peter and his wife, Susie. Within a day and a half, this tree was filled with ornaments to honor this couple. It was a way for them to be honored. It was a way for them to be blessed. It was a way for this community to be able to honor this couple in the community. It was just one way to find and to figure out a way to bless this couple in the community. There's another story that I wanted to tell you, and this other story is about All Saints Sunday. I am the interim minister in a church that's in Millersburg, Missouri, and Millersburg, Missouri is this little church. It sits on a little highway. There's about 30 people in the church, and there was a pumpkin sitting in the sanctuary, and right next to the pumpkin was a basket of markers. And the worship committee decided we were going to do something different for All Saints Sunday. And the worship committee came up and they talked about all the saints that had been in the church, that had been there in the past, and even the saints that had not been members of the church, but were saints in people's lives. And they invited folks to come up and write the names of the saints from everyone's lives on the pumpkin. And lo and behold, during the whole service, members of the congregation filled this pumpkin with names of people in their lives. The pumpkin still sits in my sanctuary, And every night, every day, I look at this pumpkin, and every day I see more and more names written on there. And I keep wondering, I actually put my mother's name on there. I put my father's name on there. I put my brother's name on there who passed away. And I wonder who else would I put on there as one of the saints that needed to be honored in my own life. Well, who would the saints be that you would put on there? Who are the saints that would you put on there to be honored? And who would you honor in your own lives? In your own way. Kimberly and I are going to talk about different ways to honor people and different ways to honor people in your lives and in your churches and in your communities. And that's what we're going to do next. Kimberly.
Yeah, well, before we do a deeper dive into some of the things we can do to honor our loved ones, I wonder if we could talk for just a second on what happens to our spirits when we don't acknowledge our loss. So when we don't name what we're feeling, when we just try to stuff that aside and just dive into the sermon series or the decorating or the baking or the okay, we are not quite there yet for that, but we will get there in just a second. I promise I'll introduce that part. So just to participate a little bit, what are some of the things that happen when we don't acknowledge our feelings through the holidays? Yeah, Leanne?
I'm wondering, how do I know that I am really not acknowledging my feelings? Because when my parents passed several years apart, childhood was tough. And, you know, I loved them. I did both of their funerals, but I used to be a real crier, but I haven't cried. And, you know, I don't know if I'm just stuffing the old things or if I'm hiding something. How do you differentiate?
That's a great question.
I mean, many people might be feeling like that too.
Absolutely. I have definitely heard that from people who have experienced a loss. And I think that's worth mentioning as it is. I think there's value to just saying, I don't know. And just sitting with that. And that is the reality that you're experiencing right now. I will say, Leanne, I don't think you're doing anything wrong. I don't think there's a wrong way to grieve. I think we're, as many individuals are on this call, those are as many different ways to grieve. I think one of the things that we do is we beat ourselves up with expectations. So I think the expectations of others, or that we perceive others will have, you know, why aren't you crying? Aren't you sad? You know, and I think we definitely can beat ourselves up that we're not meeting some kind of expectation. And I just invite you to let that go. The expectations that you think others have, or maybe that you have of yourself, that maybe it's time to show yourself some grace.
And so be aware of that with the people we ministry to, that they may be going through something like that.
Exactly. They may very well be. And I think wherever somebody is where they are. And that we just can love them and accept them right in the midst of that, the weirdness of the mixture. So I would say that one of the ways that we honor ourselves, honor God, and honor others is to not beat ourselves up about what we don't feel like doing, what we do feel like doing. I think just accepting where we are is a huge part of how we get to joy in this time.
And sometimes it's just walking the journey, whatever that journey is. That journey can look very different for you and for me.
For sure. We are going to be sharing some resources with you all. There is a handout that I use a lot called Honoring Your Loved Ones on Thanksgiving. And it's a list that I hand out to our residents. There's another one called Surviving the Holidays, and we're going to talk about a couple of those. So it's okay to start. The PowerPoint is put together because one of the things that I'd like to do in the groups that I facilitate is to share quotes. After doing a funny, kind of lighthearted icebreaker, I generally break out quotes either about Christmas or about change. And then I go around the room and have people read those out loud and to just see which of the quotes resonate with them. So as you see this PowerPoint, as these slides go through and you read the quotes, I just invite you to look to see if there's any particular quote or picture that resonates with you as we continue to share our resources here. A couple of resources for honoring, and I wonder how many of us have heard of or done a Blue Christmas service before. I don't have access to the full screen, so I can't see your hands, but one of the resources that we'll send you is a sample Blue Christmas service. If you haven't heard of it or haven't done that before, it's a service that I tend to have the Thursday before or the week before Christmas, that it's a more low-key service. We light candles, we sing carols, and it's a way to hold both of those things we've been talking about, to hold the joy and the loss in the same space. It's one of my most favorite services of the year. And so if you haven't done one before, we're going to give you a resource for that if you would like to. Another resource we're going to share is one about change. There's a Changing Seasons booklet workshop that will give you, that a lot of things about the fall season changes. I'm in Florida, so it's a little different. But for those of you in colder climates and other places, you actually have seasons that change and leaves that fall, and the days get shorter. And so all of those things can impact how we feel during the holidays. So in addition to grief and loss that people might be feeling or experiencing, or in addition to the chaos of planning the Advent season as a clergy person, you have the physical changes that are happening around you, between the light changing, the days being shorter, your skin being dry, your hair, it's just, there's a lot. So it's good to acknowledge all of that. Lina, did you have any other resources that you would like to talk about before I get into some examples of surviving?
I think we're doing good. I think
okay.
We're doing.
Well, one of the handouts that I mentioned that we will send to you is called Surviving the Holidays. It's from the Good Grief Center. And I thought I'd just share a couple of those. And then we would like to open it up for you all to share some things that you have done that has been helpful over the holidays. And then there will be some question and answer time at the end. So one of the tips for surviving the holidays is it's entitled, "You Don't Have to." If certain family traditions are making you uncomfortable this year, don't do them. For instance, don't carve the turkey if you don't want to, or don't sing along if you don't want to. Be careful not to throw out all of your traditions, but don't be afraid to stop some or drop some either. You can always pick them up again later. I know the year that my son died, he died in June, and I couldn't send Christmas cards. I had always sent a picture card of me and my two boys, and I just couldn't do it. And so I let myself off the hook for that. There may be some things that are just too exhausting if someone is grieving, going to a party or going to a church social, or for some people after loss, going to church is the most comforting thing in the world. And for other people after experiencing a loss, going to church is the hardest thing that they do. And I'm sure that you all have experienced that. One of the other things, I'll just hit one more, drop before you shop, it says. Feeling overwhelmed by a long gift list. Well, somebody used to tell me 3 gifts were good enough for Jesus. They're good enough for you. So maybe not putting the pressure on yourself to feel like you have to do everything that you've always done. Now, for some people, sticking with their routine and doing what they've always done is going to be exactly what is most comforting. So, but for somebody else, it may just be time to let something go. So those are just a couple of the surviving the holidays tips. I'm going to stop there. And I'm looking in the comments. You're absolutely right about how one size does not fit all. And we do indeed grieve differently. And I will look up the Tear Soup book because that sounds interesting. So as you have been looking at the slides, I think we've been through them at least all the way through once, right? So maybe we could stop the slides and just share for a couple minutes. Those of you who have other ways that you have found to honor grief during the holidays and to find joy. Does anybody have any ideas or things that you've done in the past or used that has been helpful?
This is Lindy, and I will just say that I am new to this. My husband just passed away in August. We had an older friend who, as she got older, started to give some of her possessions away. I have found that that has been helpful to me. The minister in the church where Patrick was serving before he retired was just commissioned. And I had Patrick's liturgical stoles, and I gave them to Michael on his commissioning.
Wow.
That was very comforting to me to be able to do that for Michael. And I'm sure as I unpack things during the holiday season that I will come across other things that were special to Patrick that I think would have special meaning to others in our family.
That is beautiful, Lindy. Thank you for sharing that.
This is Lorna.
Hey, Lorna. I
Uh,
sure can.
A tradition in our family has always been to try to, on the occasions like the anniversary of the death or during other holidays, try to do some of the things that the person who died loved so much.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother died this past year, and what he loved to do most was smoke big cigars. So it's going to be an interesting time this holiday to see how we deal with that.
I love that, Lorna.
He also liked to home brew, beer, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out too, how people decide to honor that. So that's what we do, is do the different kinds of things that people enjoyed.
I love
My mother loved to travel, so I try to at least look at a video about travel or something on TV. And that's the way we deal with some of our grief.
Thank you for sharing that. That's great. What other ideas do you have, Linda?
Yes, my husband died April of 2023, And after 17 years of being married to a Texas cowboy, I'm actually from Nashville originally, but anyway, and he had interstitial lung disease. We had him on hospice for 9 months, and he had reached a week before he died that he wasn't talking. But God gave me the mercy to the last that he started talking again. And he took his finger and he stuck it in my face, which used to drive me crazy. And he said, I do not want to look down on you and see you wearing those ugly black widow's clothes. I want you to wear those colored clothes that you wear, and you keep doing what you do, which is love the people that others don't want to love, like the homeless and the domestic violence and the Vietnam veterans. And he said, that's all. And about 2 hours later, he died.
Wow, what a gift. What a gift that was.
And it's become part of my personal theology. I mean, because I do work with, I mean, I have a church too, but I work with a lot of people that probably if they walked into my church, people would be really weird to them. But yeah. So anyway, that has helped my grief more than anything, because all I got to do is start thinking about that. Go, okay, and I don't think he's probably looking down on me. I'm hoping he's up there doing, he was a master electrician, so I hope he's doing the lights in heaven. But
that's great, Linda. Thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have something that they do? I know we're getting to where we want to, or any of the quotes that circled through in the PowerPoint, any of those resonate? Oh, Marcia.
My mother died about 6 years ago. And so every year on her birthday, which is in November, she loved flowers of all kinds. I'll go to a flower shop and purchase one flower. And while I was still working, went to the gift shop at the hospital, and I would either pick out a favorite color of a flower that she had, or pick out a rose, because roses was her most favorite, or pick out some kind of a flower. And I just pick out a single flower in a little bud vase. And when I was working, I put that on my desk. Or after I retired, I just put that on the table and enjoy it. And so that is one way that I honor her birthday every year, is buying one kind of a flower and enjoying that while it lasts.
Beautiful. Well, thank you all so much for sharing and participating. And I know we're going to have some question and answer time that Jan will facilitate, but I just want to kind of maybe close this section with whatever feelings come up for you or those in your congregation or those close to you. I think as helpers, one of the best things we can do is just help people acknowledge how they feel and be present with that, and embrace the that may feel crazy and uncomfortable, but the that is the reality of how our life exists, especially this time of year. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly and Lina. And I also want to just quickly acknowledge, if you're not keeping up with the chats, thank you to Joseph for what you commented on, and Alan, and Jerry, as well as Linda. So thank you so much for offering your input. We want to continue this conversation with you, so we still have time, and we'd love to hear from you. And if you have a question or a thought or a request or a wish, I would be happy to hear that now. And you can either type that into the chat or indicate with your actual hand or with the emoji hand that you'd like to comment. And I'll just wait a moment. I see Aaron has a hand up.
Yes, I had a comment, because the reason I'm here is not because of a death loss. And I realize that's what this is concentrated on, and I have been through that other times. But we just, in our congregation, our minister just resigned. And it's our first female minister, and she's half my age. And I feel like she was harassed into it. And my husband and I were some of the ones that loved her and backed her up and tried our best, but the majority of the congregation found things to complain about. And it's a different kind of grief. And I don't know what you have to offer me, but that's why I'm here. So
I thank you for sharing that, Erin, and I think it's important that you have shared it. And I imagine that there could be others that feel that kind of pain that you are describing. And there are so many different types of grief. We don't need to box them into any particular type. Having been on both sides of the situation that you're describing, I can say that it's really important to have conversation, not conflict, not to look for that, but to look for conversation, to be able to talk with those that you know are needing the support or the care or the concern that you or others might be feeling. And in addition to that, to just reach out in caring ways to those on both sides of the issue or in both kinds of ways. These are sorts of things that really divide people. And we know that so well in our days, these days, currently in our culture. But the conversation and coming together as community is really key. And I'm saddened for you as well as your congregation, because the leave taking of a pastor is difficult under usual circumstances or those that are positive, and it's not always that case. So we'll continue to think about what you're sharing, and maybe others would like to comment on that for Erin, or if you have others have a comment yourself about something else or a question or a thought. I'm scrolling back and forth, looking to see if anyone would like to share, ask a question.
I would just add to that I'm trying to be open to forgiveness for the people that I feel like misused their power to do what they did. And that's not always easy. I don't want to be the one that causes the congregation to split. So I'm trying the best I can.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that, Erin. And I think you're absolutely right about that. That's important, and it's challenging in its own kind of way, especially this time of the year. We find ourselves in lots of challenged places this time of year.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to offer you just a moment more, but I'm also ready to shift into telling you a couple of closing comments. We'll just give a moment more to see if anyone else has something they would like to share or ask before I do that shift. Again, just to remind you that the resources that we have collected and will make available will be coming to you by email tomorrow. We would welcome your continued feedback, comments, and so on, of course, and know that you will also have our email addresses, so Lina, Kimberly, and I, so that you can communicate with us directly if you would like to. We're very willing and open for that. I wanted to share just a little bit of practical information with you, which is something that you or others may have heard. And that is, in the study that I do on this topic, I have learned that we as humans have an innate suffering and negativity bias. It is built into us innately to find the negative side or the suffering side of reality. But the other part of that is our story as individuals living in this time is part of a history of ancient ancestors that we do not even know, going back generations and generations. And all of these ancient ancestors of ours have lived the kind of longing and loving that we are. And if we embrace the idea that we are part of a long, long line of ancestors and those of longing and loving, then how do we define the story of who we are now in our suffering or in our grief and in our lives? So while we're on this pathway and looking to the journey that we are entering of Thanksgiving and Advent and Christmas, we're finding that one possible way of working on this with our own selves and with others is to gently hold the ache, the suffering, the sadness, whatever name you want to give that. Gently hold that and say to yourself, I am doing something hard, and I am doing something organic and healthy by gently holding my suffering. And in that sense, we are making a choice about how we look toward our own grieving and sadness and sorrow, and how we find our way to look for other aspects that might reflect joy. So when you ask yourself, what is your outlook that you've chosen amidst the challenge that you're in and in your crisis of hope at this moment? Just remember what Ecclesiastes has to say in part: a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. I hope that you find ways to hold on to your courage, and I hope that you find the better angels that surround you. And I hope that you intentionally shape your vision so that your faith and your trust deepens all the way from here in your mind, way down into your heart. We send you all these blessings and our heartfelt wishes for this time, this holiday, and we want to thank you and remind you that God's love surrounds us, the angels are with us, and that we can find our strength in suffering. Thank you to Lina and Kimberly for their work and presentation today, and blessings to each of you. Goodbye.